So Bryan Kohberger is a convicted killer. He is serving 4 life sentences, and he doesn't essentially want to pay anymore to the families. When he took the plea, part of the plea was that he was going to be sentenced and have restitution. And restitution is something that, later on you get sentenced to and you have to pay back to the families. In a new court filing, his defense team argued that he should not have to pay the extra money to the families because they got money from GoFundMe. The defense is arguing that there's no way to pay because he's in prison, serving 4 consecutive life sentences plus 10 years. And honestly, they're not wrong. Under the terms of the plea deal, they can seek restitution. How it works is there's a crime victims compensation fund, and it covers things like funerals, things, travel expenses, stuff like that. But then the state asks to be reimbursed. They ask the accused, once they're convicted, to reimburse the fund. So the defense, it's not wrong. Mr. Kohberger is serving 4 life sentences plus 10 years. This is an example, in my opinion, of when common sense is ignored and outrage wins. I know we don't like Bryan Kohberger, and nobody's saying that, but this is why our legal system is how it is. It's inefficient, lacks common sense. Should the families get this money? Of course. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. But should Bryan Kohberger have to pay the state back? No brainer. How's he going to do that? So I want to talk with my fellow contributors about this. The prosecutors, y'all, they're paid by tax dollars. The court is paid by tax dollars. The defense is paid by tax dollars. Everybody knows this is a frivolous motion. Everybody knows that Bryan Kohberger can't pay this money back. So I'm certain that one of you, if not both, probably disagree with me on this. But Dave, tell me, you heard about this. You know how prosecutors are paid. You know how this works. Tell me what you think.
He should have gotten the death penalty. And this is another reason why. That's what I think. Bryan Kohberger is a lucky guy because prosecutors decided to walk away from this case and settle it against the objections of some of the families. And now he's rubbing salt in the wounds by saying, no, I don't want to pay you the restitution that you think you're owed because you made money off the internet. Well, you know what? I think the families have a right to continue to pursue it and to essentially take away his commissary funds. And maybe that's what this is about the fact that Bryan Kohberger, who didn't seem to have such a bad living arrangement in his maximum security prison, will get a commissary fund and be able to buy items that he wants to from the commissary. Well, perhaps that should go to the victims too. So I just don't believe he should get any benefit. He's a quadruple murderer. He's a liar. And he's someone who didn't show any remorse at the trial, at least not enough for me and for the victims' families. So I say, go ahead, victims' families, go ahead, prosecutors, get whatever you can from this guy. This guy's lucky to be alive.
But practically speaking, where's that money going to come from? Bryan Kohberger doesn't have any money. He doesn't have any ability to make any money. So it's going to come from his family if they put commissary dollars on. Jonna, what do you think? Tell me I'm wrong.
No, I can't tell you that you're wrong. And I agree with both of you, right? We think this guy is a creep and he should be pushing up daisies. You're not going to make any money when you're dead. He's only going to make very little behind bars. I don't know. What do they pay? Like 2 cents an hour to make license plates or whatever he's going to pay. Right. You can't force the family to pay his restitution to the victims because it's his restitution and he's never going to earn the money. What I find at once, interesting yet offensive is the fact that the defense counsel is making an argument that because the family got GoFundMe funds, they should not be entitled to any additional restitution. And on the one hand, I kind of don't blame them for making that argument. On the other hand, I feel like they're shoving it in the victims' faces by saying, hey, look, people, they got a ton of money from this crime. And that is what I find offensive. But did they have to make that argument, you guys? Probably.
Right. It definitely is offensive. I mean, they're trying to say that they're trying to profit off of this, and there were expenses. There's funeral expenses. I mean, that's what this crime victims fund is for. We've got another interesting, I hate to even say interesting because anything about Bryan Kohberger and what he did is not really interesting. But one of the girl's sisters, Kaylee's sister, she's gone on TikTok. She posted a video about some of the state's exhibits. Her name is Olivia. She posted about these exhibits and about how some of the wounds that her sister had suffered from didn't appear to be fatal. And she said they appeared to be what investigators told her what's called experimental. I think we've got SOT 1, which is the sister actually talking about these wounds.
Some descriptions of autopsy photos that the state had planned to introduce as exhibits, I just wanted to offer a little bit of, my perspective that maybe will help lessen some of the speculation. And there's really no easy way to say this. The gag order protected an absolute fucking monster. It's disgusting, but some of the wounds that were made to Kaylee were described as experimental. So a wound that might typically, in its presentation, look defensive might not have necessarily been defensive, because at some point he was inflicting wounds that, any logical person would know wouldn't be fatal. There was evidence that he continued the attack after she was no longer even fighting back.
Yeah, so guys, this just solidifies what I think we already know, that Bryan Kohberger is a very, very sick, disturbed individual. Having done death penalty defense, this evidence to me was likely going to be used as aggravation to try to get that death sentence. And that's why they had this ready. So Dave, let's start with you. I know you already said you think he should have gotten the death penalty. Does this tell you something? Does this tell us something more than we already knew, which is that he's a monster?
It could go to motive. People wonder why he did it. There was no financial motive here. He didn't steal anything. But it could be his misogyny. He's had misogyny in the past. It could be some sort of sexual pleasure he gets out of it, but it's something more than just killing. It's something really demented in his psyche. And here's a guy who dedicated his life to studying serial killers and studying crime, and that's what he wanted to be. He wanted to be a BTK killer, a Ted Bundy. Problem is, in today's day and age, your DNA will catch up with you. Your cell phone data will catch up with you. It's not the same as it was in the 70s. So this guy is a sick dude. I was going to curse there, but he deserves everything he gets,
job.
And he should. That's John's job, exactly. That's why I say a guy who did something like this, that would have been an aggravator, and that aggravator, in my mind, would have gotten him the death penalty, and he should have received capital punishment.
Yeah, I can't help but think this would have landed him on death row. Jonna, don't you wish that we could actually study him? I know he was studying this, but actually study and try to figure out and find some good in these awful crimes, have society learn how to prevent them and what drove him to this. This experimental nature of this is it's just sick.
That's just sick, right? He's a sick prick. And I don't know if this guy is organically miswired or if this is a product of some sort of nurture. And we do want to know that, you guys. How do we avoid, we try to prevent disease, right? But when we have these people, the Ted Bundys, the Bryan Kohbergers, how do we ever prevent that from happening in the future? Because clearly, I'm okay with the death penalty. I'm totally fine with the death penalty, but I don't know if it does a whole lot to prevent other people from committing these types of heinous crimes, right? I don't know how do we gather that data? So something is definitely wrong with this guy in between his ears. And it's a shame because it seems like he had a normal upbringing, but how can you be that messed up and have a normal anything? We'll never know.
Yeah, it does seem like he has a normal upbringing. I wonder if they're going to make a show Monster about this, and we'll get some more information about why maybe he was driven to do this. But yeah, definitely want to study him.